everyone, and welcome into First and North. Seahawks are Super Bowl champions, and the football season is officially over. But as we know, the NFL is year-round, and so are we. So we are going to break everything down. Welcome into First and North. I'm Cassie Carlson, alongside the voice of the Detroit Lions, Dan Miller. We have Lily Zhao from Fox Milwaukee and Pierre Nugent from Fox Minneapolis. Guys, Seahawks defense proves too dominant for MVP runner-up Drake May and the New England Patriots. Sam Darnold didn't even need to have his best stuff for the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl 29-13. It is a copycat league, so I look at Seattle's defensive front, all of which were drafted by John Schneider, and see how they were able to get to Drake May, who was sacked 6 times. And I think the Bears need game records on their defensive line in order to compete on that final Sunday of the season. Dan, when you look at the makeup of the Seahawks team, what do you take that you could apply in Detroit?
I think it's a great conversation. It is one I've actually had a couple of times since the game. I think it's really easy to get seduced into seeing what worked in this game. And really, you can go back to last year when Philadelphia sacked Kansas City 6 times and Patrick Mahomes never really had a chance. But I would say you need to kind of broaden the scope a little bit and just say this. You need to be good. Because we're not far removed from a time when we thought, oh, you have to have an elite quarterback because Mahomes and Brady have been doing it for so long. So my bottom line is this. You can do it with a great defense. You can do it with a great offense. What you can't do is do it with a team that's not playing their best football. So in my opinion, just be good. Now, I know that seems simplistic, but the key is be playing your best football in January and February, and you have a chance to get it done. And I just think it's really easy for everybody in the league to now look at it, or people outside of teams, organizations, to say, you got to have that dominant defense to win it. But just remember, we have shifted our thinking in what it takes to win a Super Bowl several times here in the last 5-10 years.
Well, I also think you could point to that they were the best, arguably, at all 3 phases, because special teams played a huge role in the Super Bowl as well. And I had a conversation with someone else who said, you got to hit on your draft picks. And Pierre, you know that, and what the ripple effect can be if you don't, as they fired the Vikings GM last week, and we were talking about it. But do you just look at the quarterback and still think, what if Sam Darnold was still in Minneapolis?
A little bit. I would say that Sam Darnold certainly proved himself not just last year, but this year as well. It's one of those things where Sam Darnold had a terrific season in Minnesota, but in the offseason, everybody, including the Vikings front office, were asking themselves, well, can you do it again? Well, not only did he prove that he can do it again, he is now a Super Bowl champion. But it's interesting, Cassie, when you look at the quarterback position, everybody needs to have that elite quarterback, and at the same time, too, an elite quarterback comes with it a hefty price tag. And even some of these quarterbacks that you would not put in the elite category, such as Tua Tagovailoa and Kyler Murray, you look at Arizona and Miami right now, and they are hampered right now with a bad quarterback contract, and what that can do to your franchise can be absolutely disastrous. So I don't think you necessarily need to have that elite quarterback getting that paid elite money to make it work. We just saw another example of that in Seattle with Sam Darnold. You can still have enough money to sprinkle around the rest of the roster and still get adequate quarterback play and emerge as a Super Bowl champion.
Pierre, I want to stick with you because all the players that weren't playing in the Super Bowl were roaming around Radio Row talking to every which media outlet, and there are a lot of quotable moments that come from that week leading up to the game. One of them from Justin Jefferson, who was speaking his mind about how quarterback play affects his status as the best wide receiver in the NFL.
I mean, how I'm not. I mean, just
you watch the games, right?
Just based off the quarter. I mean, you know, a lot of people base it off of the quarterback play, and you know, just different things that really go into you know, my position. Obviously, I gotta rely on, and you know, I gotta depend on a lot of people in order for me to get that ball. So you know, if I don't have an elite, elite position or elite quarterback that's throwing me the ball the entire year, then it's a little bit difficult to be in those conversations.
Think this creates some drama in the locker room when everybody comes back?
You know what, Cassie? I think Justin Jefferson has done more talking in a week than I've heard him in perhaps the past 5 seasons, and a lot of it has kind of raised my eyebrows just a little bit because I'm just a little surprised that he's so open. Not to say that he's incorrect. I mean, there's a difference between, perhaps being flawed in your honesty and being factually correct. And I believe that Justin Jefferson has been factually correct with everything that he said thus far. It's just raised my eyebrows a little bit in the sense that he has gone public with some of those comments. comments, and I know J.J. McCarthy is probably looking at those comments thinking to himself, well, it's obvious that Justin Jefferson needs me to raise my game because he has not put up the elite numbers while I've been under center at quarterback, and that is certainly true. But again, I'm just a little surprised that Justin Jefferson would go as public with it as he has had. But again, I cannot fault him for saying what he has said because everything he has said has been factually correct.
Maybe he'll have another quarterback throwing him passes at the start of next season. We'll get into that conversation a little bit later.
Could very well be.
The Bears won Moment of the Year at NFL Honors for Caleb Williams' touchdown throw to DJ Moore for the walk-off win in overtime back in Week 16 against the Packers. DJ Moore said he can't wait to wreak havoc on the league next year. And, of course, we know that Caleb earned the nickname Iceman, and that has kind of taken over the league with this little motion that he does in celebration. Listen to the back and forth between Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons on Parsons' podcast about it.
We was winning that game. Like, we can act like Cinderella's shoe was found. We was winning that game. It just so happened it got lost again. But, oh, my God. Don't even show me him. I can't lie. Watching seeing that and seeing him get that name, and just this right here, like, it just kind of just said.
It was tough. It was tough. You could have taken it from him, but I guess you didn't feel like taking him down last year.
No, we beat him.
No, but
when I was healthy, we beat him.
But you didn't get him.
No, I didn't get him.
Okay.
I didn't get him. I should have, though.
There's a whole lot of that.
Lily, I love how Micah Parsons can laugh at himself and how he's like, no, when I played, we beat him. But still, the Bears beat the Packers twice and when it mattered most. But I laugh because Parsons always talked about he felt so disrespected about the Bears and the way that they treated the Packers. But now it seems like he has earned a lot of respect for Caleb Williams. He wasn't able to sack him. I think he pressured him like 7 times in that first game. But I like the back and forth that these players have, knowing that they are the most elite at their position, yet they're still obviously competitors when it comes to one another.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you always want to win a game. And I think for Micah Parsons not being able to play in those last 2 games against the Bears where the Packers blew leads is something that, he kind of wished he was on the field to do. And I kind of, chuckle at the imagery we saw from their first matchup this season where, they were kind of having a nice exchange. Caleb Williams and Micah Parsons on the field, during the game. That was a fun exchange, and I kind of wish we had seen it the entire season. But, yeah, these are guys that always want to win. And that podcast is really funny. Myles Garrett certainly had a lot to say back to Micah. And listen, the Browns had the Packers number this season. Myles Garrett, a phenomenal year as well. So I know when Micah gets back on the football field next season, he's going to want to get some of those sacks and, kind of want to prove some guys wrong again next year.
All right, we know when we talk about elite pass rushers, Micah Parsons is one of them, so is Maxx Crosby, and there is a report from Jay Glazer that his time in Vegas is likely over. That made for a big storyline at the Super Bowl. Take a listen at what Aiden Hutchinson and Amon-Ra St. Brown had to say about the possibility of Crosby going to the Lions.
I was hearing some rumblings about it, but I don't know.
I'm the rumbling. Nice to meet you.
Right,
Go on.
In the event that it did happen, that would be so dangerous. But and me and Max have a great relationship. I'd love to play with him.
I don't know how you stop him and Aiden, each on one side. It would be so lit. I feel like I can't think of a duo like Aiden and Max if they were on the same team. But again, that's neither here nor there.
Don't you let him go to Chicago. Don't you let him. I don't know if you'll sweep him this next year if that happens.
If he goes to Chicago, I'll be hurt.
Dan, are you a fan of this? Is it worth trading multiple first-round picks for Crosby?
Oh, I'm a fan of it if you can make it work. And that's the bottom line. Because, Cassie, going back to what you talked about at the top of the show, if you're trying to draw up a Detroit Lions roll to the Super Bowl based on what we've just seen, it doesn't change anything we thought they had to do. You need to be better on the defensive line, and you need to be better on the offensive line. So that doesn't change what their to-do list looked like this offseason. Here's the problem with Crosby. It's another big contract, and you still have to work out deals or make a decision on finding a way to get Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch. All these guys at some point here in the near future are going to need new quarterbacks. You can redo some contracts and have $80, $100 million under the cap if you'd like to, but it's a question of how far you can kick the can down the road. It would be an all-in move, much like the Packers made with Micah Parsons. Do I think it will happen? I don't. Would I be shocked because the Lions decided, hey, let's just roll the dice here, try to put these two guys together and come out with a dominant defense? I think it's a path that you could see them taking. So it's there's a lot of things that don't make sense, mostly from a money standpoint. But I do believe, as this report is, he'll be somewhere else next year. I don't know if it'll be Detroit.
Yeah, I read a report this morning that he was having coffee with Clint Kubiak, and I'm like, that might be the only time that they're having coffee together. I would love to see Maxx Crosby in a Bears uniform. We know that the Bears also need help on their defensive line, whether it's on the interior or the edge. They need someone to complement Montez Sweat. And Maxx Crosby fits this scheme perfectly. I also love the respect that he has for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson that he's been very vocal about on his podcast week after week. He called Ben Johnson one of the best play callers. I think we know, watching what Ryan Poles did last offseason, trading for Joe Thuney to kick off free agency, the impact that had of overhauling the interior of the offensive line. Joe Thuney goes on to win the inaugural NFL Protector of the Year award. It goes to the best offensive lineman, and he was able to play every single game. That interior offensive line stuck together all season long. That's something the Bears haven't had in so many years. And I think if you get a game wrecker on the edge opposite of Montez Sweat, that could be the tip of the iceberg for this entire defense under Dennis Allen to just play more solid week after week and truly be a competitor then in the playoffs for a longer period of time, because the secondary has some strengths. They were just put in a bad position with no pass rush as they couldn't consistently get to quarterbacks, and I know Chicago would eat it up. All right, we need to take a timeout. When we come back on First and North, how will Drew Petzing utilize all his weapons in Detroit? And is there bound to be a reunion between the Vikings and Kirk Cousins? We discuss it when we come back. Welcome back to First and North. I'm Cassie Carlson at Fox Chicago, joined by Dan Miller in Detroit, Lily Zhao in Milwaukee, and Pierre Nugent in Minneapolis. A couple of new hires across the NFC North. We start with the Bears. Ben Johnson promotes passing game coordinator Press Taylor to offensive coordinator, replacing Declan Doyle, the former offensive coordinator in Jacksonville for 3 seasons. I wasn't really surprised by this move. I know he was interviewing a lot of young other guys across the league, but to stay in-house, I think this is important for the entire operation of this offense under Ben Johnson in year 2. Most importantly, and for Caleb Williams being in this system and having continuity for that second season. Press Taylor did a great job with this offensive scheme. They were one of the best teams when it came to explosive plays in the league, and I think that's going to carry over. And he's also just another young guy who knows what it takes to work under Ben Johnson. I don't think working for Ben Johnson is for everyone, but I think Press Taylor knows what to expect. He's not going to call plays. He is there to help the head coach, run meetings, run practice, and then be ready for game days. And so I think it was smart to stay in-house for this move. And they also bring in Eric Stoodsville for the running backs coach, someone who's coached a handful of running backs across the league, including Marshawn Lynch. He coached 12 running backs who had over 1,000 rushing yard seasons, and they overlapped with Ben Johnson in Miami. Pierre, I want to talk to you because last week we talked about the timing of Vikings GM Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and how they fired him and they weren't going to hire his replacement until after the draft, but then they bring in Matt Thomas as a consultant during the offseason. How will this be able to help the Vikings salary cap situation, as they're like $40 million over the cap right now?
Yeah, the cap situation as of right now is not a pretty picture here in Minnesota, but Matt Thomas certainly has years and years of experience across several franchises, most notably the Seattle Seahawks from 2013 to 2024, where he recently was. But that is his bread and butter, is the salary cap and managing contracts. Rob Brzezinski, who is taking over as the interim GM for the Minnesota Vikings, he's also an expert in that area as well. But now he can kind of leave that to Matt Thomas and go focus with the football personnel and prepare for the upcoming draft, because he's going to be the guy helping the coaching staff and the scouts throughout this process of the upcoming draft. So Rob can now concentrate on that. They bring in Matt Thomas as a consultant. He can kind of take care of the contracts and the salary cap situation for Minnesota. I think it's a really good hire for the interim basis right now for Minnesota as their search for a new GM continues.
All right, before the draft comes free agency, and the reports are the Falcons are expected to cut quarterback Kirk Cousins. Could you see a reunion with Cousins and the Vikings?
I think it's a matter of what does Kirk want and what is the realistic expectation for him in his career right now. He's going to be turning 38 in August. Does Kirk Cousins still view himself as a viable starter in the league? And knowing Kirk Cousins the way we got to know him over the last handful of years, the answer to that question I would have to imagine is still yes. So if he wants to come in here and expect to be the starter. He certainly will have the opportunity to battle to become the starter, but I'm not sure that this would be a move that makes a ton of sense for the Vikings, even though he knows the offense very, very well. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me right now. If you're going to bring in Kirk Cousins at the age of almost 38 when you decided not to re-sign Sam Darnold, and I know that there's going to be a change in direction in terms of the front office, but that's not a move right now that I think makes a lot of sense for the Vikings. I think they'll have to look elsewhere for quarterback competition for J.J. McCarthy.
If the Falcons cut him, that'll be one of the first moves by new general manager Ian Cunningham and president of football Matt Ryan. And speaking of, Bears fans are not very happy that they didn't get compensatory picks for the hiring of Cunningham because he's not considered the primary football decision maker in Atlanta. But then Matt Ryan had to say this about their roles.
Are going through the draft process and the free agency, are you going to be actively involved in that, or are you going to let your people do it? Or?
Man, Ian's in charge. Ian's in charge of that space. I'm looking forward to learning about, this. Like I said it the other day in Ian's presser, like I've never sat in a draft meeting. And so Monday is going to be the first time I'm sitting in a draft meeting, and I've got a lot to learn. So sitting, observing, being a fly on the wall, if there's something that Ian has a question about or something I can help with, I'm all ears and I'm happy to share my opinion. But Ian is driving this boat, and he is the one that's leading us moving forward, and I'm excited about that. You guys, Ian is incredibly competent and qualified, and he's awesome. So looking forward to watching him do his thing.
Yeah, I don't think this is a good look by the NFL. This is all because of the Rooney Rule and what it states that they have to have a promotion and be the primary football decision maker. And Ian Cunningham was the assistant GM in Chicago for 4 seasons. He had GM interviews for the past 3 years and turned them down for the right opportunity. And now he has his friend who he worked with in Chicago, Ryan Poles, who's former roommates and teammates with Matt Ryan at Boston College, help him with the process. And you have Matt Ryan saying he doesn't really know how to scout. He has never been in a draft room. Ian Cunningham is going to be the one driving the ship and making the decisions, especially as it leads up to draft and free agency. So I think this is a situation that the NFL needs to take a look at, because the Bears got cheated out of 2 third-round compensatory picks that people are not happy about, and someone got a promotion. I think they need to work at the language that's in the Rooney Rule so this doesn't happen next time. Dan, I saw an article from the Detroit Free Press that said Cardinals tight end Trey McBride reached out to Sam Laporta and told him, quote, "You're going to eat under Drew Petzing, their new offensive coordinator." How do you think Petzing will utilize all of those Lions' weapons?
Well, he would know. He caught 237 passes over the last 2 years under Petzing. So, look, I think the reason that Dan Campbell and Petzing clicked is they believe in the same things. They believe in hard-nosed football, running the ball, and that's what the Lions want to get back to. That's unfortunately what they got away from this year, because that offensive line wasn't the same as it had been in previous years. Now, look, I don't know that you have to get back to saying you've got the best offensive line in football, which the Lions said for a couple of seasons, but you do have to get back to a point where you can dictate pace, run the football. That then sets up Jared Goff's play action, where statistically he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league doing that. That's a big part of what Petzing does as well. He wants that quarterback under the center. He wants them to be able to run the ball. He wants play action. Also, we saw a lot of 3 tight end sets for them in Arizona. That's a position where the Lions are a little bit light right now because of injuries, so it'll be interesting to see, and maybe a tip as to which way this is going to go. If the Lions go out and sign a couple of veteran free agents in the free agent period coming up here. So I do think, look, it's going to be run-based, play action, utilizing the weapons downfield. My question is, based on all that tight end usage that we saw, yes, Laporta's certainly one of them. He's coming back off an injury. Brock Wright coming back off an injury. There's some questions at that position, which was a key part of Petzing's offense in Arizona, which I think still has to be answered.
We still know that Lions offense is stacked with so many weapons. Lily, I was watching First Take this morning, and Chris Canty listed out his top 5 NFC quarterbacks. Here's a list: Matthew Stafford, Jaden Daniels at number 2, then Sam Darnold, Jalen Hurts, and Caleb Williams, number 5, to round out his top 5. Are you surprised Jordan Love was not on that list?
I mean, you can say you're, I am surprised. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't agree with this list, but that's not my take. But Jordan Love, I think, is a quarterback that has a lot of room for improvement. I think a lot of people, again, just saw that he wasn't able to lead the Packers back against the Bears. But again, you talk about having a complete team in the postseason, a team playing their best football, and the Packers didn't have that in 3 phases. And yeah, you can always point to the quarterback saying he could have done more. And yeah, he should have done more. The Bears really shut him down there. But again, he can't make the kicks. He can't stop Caleb Williams. And so I think think there was a lot, maybe, people didn't think that Jordan Love was able to complete this year and lead the Packers past the Bears and make a deep playoff push. But that being said, I think Jordan Love in his, third season as a starter for the Packers had a great year. I think he ended on a great note personally. And so there's a lot of room for growth for Jordan Love. So while I don't agree with that list, I think, that's something that he can work toward next year and becoming a top 5 quarterback.
All right, I want to get your guys' take on something that's been going around in Chicago, because Mike Vrabel wins NFL Coach of the Year, and I think that was a shoo-in for him to win. But Ben Johnson only received 1 vote for the award, and in Chicago we're like, is this an indicator of just the outside's perspective of him as a head coach, that he kind of created all this drama? He's a little bit outspoken. He had the shirtless moment in the locker room. He had his message towards Packers fans. Dan, I know that people feel a certain way about Ben Johnson because he left Detroit to go to Chicago, but what do you feel like the perception is in Detroit of the Bears head coach?
Well, I think there's still a lot of anger that he stayed in the division. And look, I underestimated that when he left. I looked at it and thought he went to the best situation that he thought he could be successful with, and I think a lot of that had to do with Caleb Williams. But I do believe that there's a lot of fans in Detroit in particular that are like, you had other opportunities, could have gone to Jacksonville, could have gone to Washington, could have gone someplace else, and he chose not to do that, but he took the job in Chicago inside the division where they're going to see him twice a year. Ben Johnson, when he was here, didn't have quite the spotlight on him that he had as a head coach. It wasn't him here talking in the locker room and taking his shirt off and better, best, whatever that is. So it's a different picture being painted now of Ben Johnson than we had when he was here. So, yeah, I think he has certainly rubbed some people the wrong way, starting with Matt LaFleur the day he got the job. So I just think there's an arrogance to him that might rub people the wrong way, but I would hate to think that that really impacts a vote in a situation like this. Certainly he is a worthy candidate who got that team in the position that they were in to do what they did this year, and would be a worthy winner if they decided that. I think it was just a tough year for that when Vrabel takes a 4-13 team and they go and win a division. But Ben Johnson could have made basically the same case for what he did in Chicago. I just think it's hard sometimes to get inside of voters' heads and figure out what motivated them to go in the direction that they went.
Yeah, one thing I laugh about now is before he was hired, the conversation was, well, can he be a leader of men? And we just got that answer so quickly as soon as he was hired in Chicago, just based off his messaging and the way he changed the culture here. All right, we need to take our final timeout. We take a look at some important off-season dates when we come back on First and North. Welcome back to First and North. We are taking a look at some key dates coming up. February 17th, the franchise tag window opens up. On February 23rd, the NFL Combine takes over Indianapolis. Then it's free agency, which begins on March 11th. And then from April 23rd to the 25th, the NFL Draft out in Pittsburgh. So let's take a look at one of the most fun things about the Super Bowl winners. They get to go to Disneyland. And Sam Darnold and Kenneth Walker are the ones who got to go on their ride of choice, and they chose the teacups. Look at this video. I can't help but laugh. It's like 2 grown men enjoying teacups with a bunch of kids. Guys, it's hilarious to me.
I hate teacups.
They make me dizzy.
And I'm very glad they're not spinning the wheel in the middle that just makes you sick. I absolutely hate them. I hated riding them with my kids, and I will never go on one again.
Yeah,
ever.
Teacups and tilt-a-whirl are my worst nightmares. And I can't tell if they're having fun or if they're like, all right, this is obligatory. Let's get this thing over.
Just
not
keep
Space
it steady,
Mountain.
man.
I'm shocked
No
they didn't go with
spinning.
Space Mountain. That's a classic.
That I would do, 100%.
Yeah, I want to see him on a roller coaster. That's
Can't
what I
get
want to
video
see.
of that one, though. All right, everyone. Great show as always. For Dan, Lily, and Pierre, I'm Cassie Carlson. Thanks for watching First and North. We'll see you next week.